So we're going to cover two arguments for God's existence today, quite philosophical in nature, but you're smart guys, so you'll catch up. The moral argument and an argument for reason called the evolutionary argument against naturalism, which is complicated. The moral argument is quite straightforward, so we'll start with that, and we've even covered that before, so I won't go into very much detail. I will sort of go through it quite quickly, and then we'll stop to the second argument. Basically, morality is about what is good and evil, what is right and wrong. Is it right to torture a child for fun, or is it wrong? That's what morality is about. And the question is, if morality is real, also known as objective. And I've actually started to prefer saying real morality, because sometimes people don't get what objective morality is about. Basically, if morality is real, if moral values are facts, it's a fact that it is evil to torture a child for fun, then it's actually exists, it's real. And the same thing with duties. If we have a moral duty not to torture a child for fun, then it actually is a moral fact. Okay. So the argument goes like this: if real moral values and duties exist, then God exists. And the second premise, real moral values and duties do exist, and therefore God exists. So it's quite straightforward. And this is a logical argument. If both of these premises are true, then the conclusion that God exists has to be true. It's logically necessary that it's true. So how do we know that this first premise is true? Well, it's quite obvious, I think, that if God didn't exist, if atheism is true, then there's no reason to believe A, that there are these moral facts floating around somewhere in another realm, and B, that they would sort of connect to the moral understanding of evolved apes on planet Earth, because that's all that we are on atheism. So, we might explain how we came to our moral beliefs in human right and liberty and dignity and all that through socio-biological evolution, basically through pointing out that, well, it's beneficial for our species to say that we should care for each other, or that English society developed these ideas to promote welfare and the British Empire and what have you. You can have all these explanations without claiming that they're actually true and that they're actually a fact that, I, as a human being raised in the 21st century who have certain opinions about slavery or prostitution or war, etc., that those beliefs are actually right. Because if they're right, then I'm talking about real moral values. And if others are to behave in that way, then they have a real moral duty. And on atheism, that can't really exist. Because again, there's no reason for why such moral facts should exist in an ideal world somewhere, non-connected to the natural world, but also how, we even could grasp and, take hold of such an ideal world. It doesn't make any sense on atheism. And as I've listened to debates between atheists and Christians on this argument, atheists generally are very divided concerning this. Quite a lot of atheists will say that, well, there are no evidence for objective moral values. There are no evidence that these moral ideas that we have are real, that they are facts. And so they will simply deny that. While other atheists, realizing that this means that you cannot say that Hitler was wrong, you cannot say that someone who rapes and tortures a child is doing something wrong, you realize that this totally goes against our moral experience. And that leads us to the second premise: real moral values and duties exist. You see, when we say that someone who is doing something that we think is totally horrendous and evil, we actually say that there is this realm of moral facts which that person should obey. Because if that wasn't the case, then me pointing out, oh, it's so horrible that you raped that little child, is like me saying, oh, it's so horrible that you like chocolate ice cream. But there's no moral duty for anyone else to eat chocolate ice cream just because I think that way. So the moment we say that that's wrong, or that's evil, or that's good and that's right, and this is what we ought to do, this is what we ought not to do, then we're actually confessing that real moral values and duties exist. Now, couldn't that be just an illusion that we have? That's basically what the atheist has to argue, that this is just an illusion of the human mind, that there aren't really moral values and duties out there. It's just something we come up with to sort of cope in the world. But again, nobody really believes this. Because the moment when we make moral judgments and either promote or prohibit moral ideas and actions, then we actually confess that these are real things. They're not just illusions of the human mind. And I think this is more than just hypocrisy on the atheist part. First saying that there are no moral values and then trying to act morally and, condemning others who act immorally. It's more than hypocrisy. Basically, when an atheist says that there are no moral values and duties that are real, then the atheist is actually saying that we should believe something that we don't believe, including the atheist, him or herself. And that's why I think this is actually one of the most powerful arguments for God's existence, because I think that both premises are evidently true. Atheism has no explanation whatsoever that real moral values and duties should exist, but yet all of us know that they do exist, and therefore we can know that God exists. Now, another reason for why atheism cannot explain why real morality should exist is because the logical outcome of atheism, as is generally believed here in the West and in Europe, is that everything is sort of determined by the laws of nature and the processes of nature, all the atoms and particles bumping into each other. It's sort of a domino effect from the start of the Big Bang, and that's determined. You can't change that because there's no supernatural intervention in the world, according to the atheists, and so everything just happens, and all the way that we behave are just a consequence of the input that we get. And then you can't really have morality. There's a podcast called Apologetics Canada, which is a podcast from Canada doing apologetics. They have a guy called Steve Kim, and he described it like this. Suppose that you have two domino bricks, and you can choose by either putting or petting, no, pointing, what? Patting. You can pat the left on the right, boom, or the right on the left, right? That's your two options. Which option is evil? Neither. Right, Heather. So it doesn't matter. Now, you can increase these to 1 million domino bricks, and it's still not good or evil, which way they go, or in what order all these domino bricks are put. You could increase this to 1 Google, which is a 1 followed by 100 zeros, domino bricks, and still there's no morality here. And when you think about it, the number of atoms in the observable universe is less than a Google, then you realize that there could not really be any real morality on an atheist worldview. Now, for that very same reason, atheism cannot really explain why reason exists. And so by reason, I mean our thinking, and especially, the way we try to think logically to form coherent thought that don't contradict each other and doesn't make any sense. What we're basically trying to do on these Q&As. And this is actually a real problem for atheism. Because again, if everything is just determined by all the physical things that exist in the universe that bump into each other in a very long chain of events, then there is no choice, there's no free will on an atheist worldview. And there are indeed many atheists who say, no, there's no free will. We don't choose, we have an illusion of choosing, but whatever choice we make is just the circumstances of our environment and what we learned and how we were brought up. It's not really that we have an agency, we're just machines, biological machines, computers who just do whatever we're told by our environments. And so it's quite common that you encounter atheists who think like this, like Richard Dawkins, for example. But then it's not really possible to talk about rationality or choosing to do something reasonable, to say that, for example, atheism is reasonable, so I choose to believe in atheism. Well, on atheism you don't. And you can't really criticize a Christian for being Christian, because there's no real rationality here. There's no choice involved for doing something rational. And then when we step to the evolutionary argument against naturalism, this is formulated by a Christian philosopher called Alvin Plantinga, who resides in the United States. And he points out that evolution actually speaks against atheism, which is not something that you hear very commonly. But he thinks that's the case, and I think he has a very good argument for it. So say that you both believe in evolution and naturalism. Naturalism is this idea that nature is the only thing that exists. So there's no supernatural realm, there is no God, there are no angels, no spirits, and everything that happens in the universe is just caused by these natural laws and natural processes. There are no miracles and so on. Quite a common belief nowadays. Now, here Alvin Plantinga says, if you believe that both evolution and naturalism is true, then you would expect that the cognitive faculties in our brain that produces our beliefs are not reliable. So there's a low reliability of our thinking. Now, why is that? Well, he points out that evolution just wants survival. So the goal of evolutionary process is to avoid death, right? And evolution by natural selection makes sure that animals that don't die will get babies. and so they are the ones that will go on and give their DNA and give their species more life. So that's what evolution is interested in, so to speak. And if naturalism is true, there is no God guiding evolution. It's just a blind process making sure that species that are adaptable to their surroundings survive. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that what they think is true. So Alvin Plantinga talks about a little frog. Here's a frog sitting on a leaf. And the frog sees a fly. All right? And so the frog pulls its little tongue out and eats the fly. All right? Now, that's obviously a pattern that will promote the frog's survival. And so whatever this little frog is thinking, it's the thinking that promotes survival that will make sure that this frog lives on and have baby frogs, right? But whatever beliefs the frog has about these flies don't have to be true as long as they promote survival. So either the frog can think, oh, there's a fly there, I should eat that because I need flies to survive, and then they eat it. And that would be a true belief as far as we understand it. But it could also be that the frog thinks that's a dangerous weapon against me and I'm gonna attack it. And so the eating is just a byproduct of this false belief. It could even be that the frog thinks that the fly is over there, even though it's over there. And so it tries to shoot its tongue out to catch the fly, but it really shoots its tongue out that way. So the tongue goes the right way, but the frog was thinking wrong the whole time. Basically, Plantinga's point is that you don't have to have true beliefs just to survive. You could equally have false beliefs if they promote your survival. But the problem, of course, for the naturalist or atheist is that if we can't rely on our beliefs, and we're as much animals as this frog, then we can't, reasonably believe in any of our beliefs, including naturalism. So basically, the combination of believing in evolution and believing in naturalism is that the probability of our reason is low. And it's a very interesting argument. And yeah, I'm guessing that you have a lot of questions concerning both of these, so we'll go to the Q&A session directly. And please tell me if I...
That combination is a self...
It's a self-defeater, yeah. You cannot rationally believe in both of them, exactly. That's his point.